So I'd like to hear from Obi what your experience has been and what the issues with respect to this whole subject of reform and so on has been.
Dr. I thought I heard you say that you were going to start with the head of service and then you were going to go to Joe Abba, so I could...
I'm going to end up with the reformer.
So I could learn about the things that have happened since I was last, in government.
Yeah.
Because clearly, I would be speaking like so far away from this moment.
Yeah.
I think what's important in this conversation, and it was good that we listened to a friend from Georgia. And by the way, I want to say that the Georgia reform is a world-class reform that we use when I was at the World Bank to try to get governments to buy into the necessity for reforms. And what it does is to say to each country that it can be done.
Yeah.
It simply can be done. Get it done.
It can be done.
One major point that I'd like to set as a broader context for everything that happened in a place like Georgia, or in fact in places like Hong Kong, or places like Southwest, the Queensland in Australia, is that society got to a point where it realized that the cost of corruption was too high for everybody. That nobody, even those who benefited from corruption, really on a net aggregate basis were benefiting. So the pressure for change became almost universal. But it required the leadership of government as the overarching system to push everybody in the direction of reform. So that's number one. Now, one thing we have found as you look across countries is that if three things are in place, you can organize your actions to reform and to achieve competitiveness and productivity, which have a common convergence in the fact that one reinforces the other and one causes the other. So it's such a vicious, cyclical, symbiotic relationship that they've got. One thing we found is, if you've got number one, top-level political commitment, it's a tripod. Top-level political commitment. Number two, measures that prevent the occurrence of corruption. Number three, measures that sanction the corruption actions that happen. In this tripod, you would find that measures that prevent corruption often are the same measures that improve the competitiveness of governance, of the society, of the system. Now, Dr. What is it that then has failed us? What has essentially failed us is that we dwell on the matter of measures that reduce opportunities for corruption, that is preventive measures. And what we do is that we multiply the number of rules and processes instead of operating from the maxim that anything that exists must have a purpose. Anything that exists that has no purpose that it is serving ought to die. That is the principle for chopping off all the multiplicity of rules and systems. That, for example, was what we did in education. When I got to education, we discovered that every minister that came was captured by a certain segment of education and told, if you can just set up this, every problem in education would be over. So each minister donated an agency to education. So by the time I got there, we had 22 parastatals. The reform became, how do you use this system of, if a thing exists without a purpose, it must go. We did that. And we had a convergence that enabled us to then end up with 6 areas of functionality to govern the education system. As soon as we left, everybody said, thank you very much, that we can go back to our 22 parastatals. Now, the third part of sanctioning bad behavior when it occurs. You know, Datu, unfortunately, in these 3 domains of political commitment, which we have, none of us, I don't think there are many of us in Nigeria who would be worrying what deals the vice president and the president are cutting behind closed doors. I don't think we are there anymore, you know, hopefully. But in all those 3, political commitment, measures that prevent corruption, sanctioning of corruption, you know what is consistent? It is the quality of leadership and the quality of institutions. And in the quality of leadership and quality of institutions, we see a very artificial dichotomy between individuals and institutions. The truth is that part of what led to the progress that Georgia made was that it had an assemblage of quality of individuals with the right character, the right competencies, and the right capacity. Once they assembled that, and they got a motivating rallying point to move the reform, they began to build processes that were simpler in nature. And so, if we want to move, and that's my last point, if we want to move in the direction of a Georgia, we need to think in terms of our productivity. We don't think in terms of productivity. Right now, there is absolutely zero incentive for our dear head of civil service and the civil service to either perform or not perform. Zero incentive. Every society works on the basis of incentive. What incentive structure drives the behavior of the public service? The second thing is the cost of bad behavior is actually so low. The benefit of bad behavior is higher. The natural, rational Nigerian would make a choice on the basis of the costs
benefit
and the benefit. And what we have presently, including by the private sector, by the way, is that if the cost of bad behavior is high, I don't want to get into bad behavior, but if the benefit of bad behavior is high, I want to get into bad behavior. That's what the system has defined itself as. So it means that the umbrella definition of our reform must be one that says it's about resetting completely our incentive structure as a society, so that our incentive structure says to us it's all about the productivity level of Nigeria. Without improving our productivity level, we cannot compete with anybody, anywhere in the world. We have a productivity crisis. That should be the pressure for the action between government, private sector, and citizens. And I believe that if we make sure that investment, institutions, and policies are aligned in a way that anchors on productivity, incentive structure, and a sanctions regime, we would be able to organize the different actions that would lead us to something better than Georgia.